Good day, everyone. Welcome to another episode of The Remote Trends. I'm your host, John Ho, and today I'm very happy to invite my friend and a professional Scrum Master, Aman, to talk about how to help management transition their staff from a conventional environment, working environment, to a remote work environment. Thank you, Aman. How are you doing today?
I'm good, John. Thanks for having me.
Now, can you explain to us what is a Scrum Master and what is your background?
Sure. So a Scrum Master is a tech industry role specifically. I basically work with remote teams. I work with in-house teams as well, so non-remote teams, and to produce product increments, so in technology, so software. But it's all about promoting change, being a servant leadership sort of role. Yes, it's cool. It's about working in between the teams and like senior management. So I'm like the gap between communication, basically.
And do you also have a lot of experience helping management in conventional companies with their staff transitioning to remote work?
Yes, I've worked with a few companies doing that on like short contracts where we kind of talk through, this is the structuring you need, this is where sort of the avenues that you need to take to kind of go down that route. More like consultancy.
Now, obviously, since COVID, the trends has been tremendous, right? People who are traditionally in their office now has to work from home or work from anywhere. But as a Scrum Master yourself, what are the main obstacles that you see most employees have when they transition to this remote work lifestyle?
Okay, in my experience, I think the biggest one is lack of personal interaction, so feeling isolated. So that's quite a big one. Lack of proper routine, not feeling like they're part of company culture, difficulties in communication, trying to understand what it is that management are asking from them. Distractions. So once working at home, if you've got kids, pets, family members in the house as well, if you don't live alone, you're going to get people coming in and out, being noisy. You just got to take that on the chin. Information handovers. So lack of like information or knowing who to go to, especially when a company moves to remote ways of working. You just don't know who to contact. Your health, I think that's a pretty big one. Working remotely requires you to sort of be on your computer screen, sitting down all the time. You're sort of less active, less mobile, so you probably put on a bit of weight. So all of these things, huge to productivity.
That sounds like a lot of challenges for one person to get to adapt to this lifestyle. And so, from your experience working with different companies, how would you consult management when they help the employees starting to this transition?
Basically, being supportive. So lack of focus, things like that. You got to be there. You got to, as a manager, you've got to schedule teamwork sessions, right? You've got to be able to say, okay, what's the problem? Lack of focus, let's get on a team call, kind of give that avenue for everyone to speak to each other, basically. What was another one I mentioned? So isolation, for example. So again, if I was working remotely and I felt isolated, I want to go to like co-working spaces or coffee shops. I also want to be able to connect with my team. So I think a structure needs to be in place. So as a manager, what I've used in my teams is I will book like a daily check-in call. Mega important. It's 15 minutes in the morning. Everyone jumps on as a team. We all have 5 minutes of informal chat, kind of keep that company culture going. And then the rest of the time, communicate about what's going on today. What's our plans for today? What did we achieve yesterday? Any blockers or things that we can support each other with.
When you communicate with the management, is there any pushback when you ask them to do something like this? Because it's also non-traditional for management to kind of motivate the team in this kind of setting. Sometimes you expect them to just come to the office and start working, whereas now there seems to be a little bit more work on the management side as well.
Yeah, definitely. I think pushback is normal, but it's sort of can be like balanced with education for the management. So just telling management, these are the benefits if you let go of control. I think that's going to be a big thing for management, because they can't see proactively what their teams are working on or doing, right? Let go of that, trust the individual, let them adapt to remote working, and you'll see the fruits of like this change. When dealing with pushback, it's just a one-on-one real conversation saying, hey, try this, see it as an experiment, and then we'll talk about and connect after with how you feel about it after, especially when they can see the team as well thriving. Yeah.
It almost sounds like you also have to convince management to embrace this kind of transition themselves, because not everyone is immediately on board with it. So how do you tell the management the pros of letting go and trusting their staff, to this new trend?
I think it usually helps if senior stakeholders have already kind of given the sign off, right? So if it's come from the powers above, you've got that backing, that management aware that they need to make a change. For me, my role is supporting them to make that change, right? And saying, hey, like, what can I do? Where can I step in? What are your concerns? If they've got concerns about how am I going to connect with the team? We know there's tooling out there. There's things like Slack. There's video conference calls that they can jump on with the team. They need to just learn how to be more connected, not in person, but just via video and via these toolings that are available out there.
Now you mentioned tooling, and how important is this for people in their transition?
Huge. Tooling is going to be the biggest challenge, I think, because there's going to be so much training around it. So during during the transition, you need to sort of have invest in a lot of technology. Basically, you're going to need project management software. So right now, I'm using Jira as a project management software, and it's pretty cool. So you can see what everyone's working on visually on a board. So things like that will support management, right? Figuring out what's going on. You need to have collaboration tools, something like Miro, like a digital whiteboard tool. So you can sort of go on and everyone can be on the same meeting, making notes together. Cloud storage, where's all this going to be saved? All the documentation that you're creating as a team, you need to have it saved somewhere. It's not going to be in paper binders now. It's going to be, on the cloud, saved, secure cloud storage, right? Things like Zoom, video conference softwares. So Slack will kind of solve the whole problem of it won't solve it, but it'll make it easier to have direct live communication, right? Rather than emails where they'll be sent, could be lost. On a Slack message, you'll still keep communication up regardless of where the person is around the world. So, because there's time zone issues too. So Slack will help have that sort of kind of like WhatsApp, right? But on your computer.
Obviously, different individual will have a different pace to adapt and learn these tools and skills. And so how should management help with those who particularly struggle more, or they find it really hard to adapt? What would you advise them to do?
Okay, so I think mainly the first thing is to walk through with your employees each of the changes you're going to make, right? So you need to have a remote work policy in place. It needs to cover topics like working hours, all the software tools you're introducing, and how you're planning to measure their productivity. Because the employees are going to feel challenged, because they're well, how do I know I'm doing a good job? How am I going to know, how they're being measured? So that's got to be upfront. Then it's got to be a case of you need to train all your co-workers. Everyone's got to understand how to use the tooling, everything you're putting in place. You're going to need things like, VPN, secure VPN networks, if they're working on computers, so things like that. They need to know how to set things up, how to set up a home office, how to even, have a correct seating position so you don't get back pain, all about occupational health. So I'd really suggest have HR involved in all of this to get this communication to the employees out. You could even support how to, I've run sessions with, how to structure a work day, what's a good work routine, because during the day you want your employees to get some fresh air and work out, things like that. So you could support them and run like a general chat session of, okay, how you structure your workday, and get opinions to kind of offer them help. Yeah, definitely communicate expectations. So what the expectations for you as management is to your employees, saying, look, this is the transition. If you're finding challenges, you can, come and support, like we can offer support. Here's a documentation as well if you need to read it on your own. And it's a lot of checking in. I think that's the biggest thing with management, a lot of checking in with employees, seeing how they're feeling, supporting them. It's feeling isolated, especially. You need to have things in place that gets a team to connect, have ways of working with your team. So you could jump on a call with the team, do a whole workshop with them where you discuss, okay, this is our ways of working in this team. We're going to connect every day at 9:15. Then we're going to have a meeting at the end of the day. We're going to have these things in place for you to store everything you create. So documentation. A good avenue would be Confluence. So it's all about having all the support networks in place to enable your teams to be able to do their jobs.
That sounds like a very long process to help people transition that involves multiple departments and a lot of tools for the whole thing. Now, what is the period that you would say approximately for each employee to do that transition, but in your experience?
I think that's probably the hardest question you could ask, John. I think it's so individual. It depends on so many personal circumstances.
Right.
I would say the best way management can sort of see, if they want to say, okay, how do we know that our team is transitioning? Is sort of seeing how much productivity there is, actually connecting with the team, ask them, say, how are you feeling with working remotely? How can I support you? In those everyday check-ins, asking them like the questions of, okay, cool, is there anything you need from us? I think it's a long journey, basically. I would say start it off, see a couple of months later, check in. It all depends on like the actual company structure, how many people are involved in the transition. Yeah. A lot of personal circumstance there.
It also sounds like there needs to be a feedback loop in place, so the management knows what to keep track of, and the employees needs to really be transparent about, like, okay, the struggles, what's the stages of it. Is there a system that you would use, or guidelines that you would give to different management about, a checklist of things that they need to ensure before the full transition?
We usually, because I work specifically in technology, we use a process called Scrum to sort of give that feedback loop. But if it was a non-tech company, specifically like non-software, I would still say you could try use something like Scrum, like an agile way of working. So it would allow you to have time for transparency, inspection, and adaptation. So they're the three pillars that you really want to aim for when doing a change like this. You could decide, depending on how many employees you have, it could be something like every 2 weeks where you connect again and kind of learn from what's happened in the previous 2 weeks. Could be up to a month. So that's, completely up to you in the situation that the company is in. But 100% keep communication over every couple of weeks, have a check-in with, management and employees, kind of connecting to say, how's this going for us? What is it that you don't know yet, what we can offer? And that will allow you to really quickly adapt rather than waiting like a long sort of waterfall linear list method way.
Can we talk about motivation? Because I feel like a big part of it is also, obviously you have corporate senior level making sure this has to be in place. And then the management's responsibility is to get the employee transition smoothly in their work. If you have to talk to a manager about, okay, this is how you need to motivate the staff, that this is going to be good for you, and you just need to be like on board. What should people talk about in terms of motivation, and how can it be done?
I would say with your co-workers, everyone's got to be on board and show that actually, like, we have all these tooling in place, like we can get this done, be very positive. A lot of people I found, especially during COVID, when companies were transitioned to like remote working, it was a situation thing. So they knew they sort of had to. I know like recognition and appreciation things, like, you know, in office, there's a lot of time where you can have like, when something's going right for the company or someone's performed, you can recognize and appreciate them in person. So things like that still needs to take place, and that will keep up, you know, the employee satisfaction, their motivation, their productivity and morale. And that's where you sort of want to keep running with it. So like online things like you can give kudos or shout outs, send like an email out saying, oh, this team's done this, or so-and-so has gone above and beyond. That will keep up motivation.
That's also good suggestions, because as an employee of a company, you know, a lot of times it feels more like a responsibility and something that you really want to put effort into getting everyone in line and seeing the purpose of doing this, right? And the reason why we want to talk about the remote trends is because, you know, like me and you both understand how this is going to be a norm. In fact, this is already a norm, but not to say that it is easy or everyone can just transition to remote work, you know, without, like you said, proper tooling, without the support of management, without giving them enough time to really adapt to this, right? So I really appreciate the vast knowledge of you understanding different aspects of it, and, you know, you sharing insights on this. Any more nuggets that you want to give to the audience when it comes to, like, if I have to help, you know, my team, non-tech team, to go through this period of time, what are the key things that I want to pay attention to as a manager? Understanding if certain individuals are really transitioning and fully adapt to it, or how is it to spot like people still struggling through the process?
High level, I'd say definitely established structured daily check-ins. So one-on-ones if the team work more independently, or team calls if it's a highly collaborative team. You want to make sure this is really predictable. So it's the same time, regular and predictability, right? For the team to know that this is a forum, they can check in, consult with you, raise concerns, and all their questions will be heard. Another thing I can say is communication. So like we said, all the tooling. So, but make sure there's several ways to communicate, because not everyone's going to be able to communicate the same way, and not everything needs an email. So video calls, Slack, email, make sure that avenue is open for all the employees. Like I mentioned before, rules of engagement. So setting up how the team's going to work together, and let the employees have a say how they're going to work, you know, in remote working. Ask them, get them to do voting, so they actually have a say of, oh, this process isn't handed down to us. We've had an active voice in the process of how we work. That will definitely get their buy-in, and, you know, to supporting the question you asked me earlier, that will also increase their motivation as well to stick to this, because they design the process with you. Big one, provide you know, opportunities for social interaction. Booking a call in with the team, half an hour call, just to chill, just to sort of have a cup of tea. You could have pizza on the call. You could, you know, do a quiz with the team, just to talk about things other than work, to allow them to not feel so isolated on their own. And again, it builds morale, team building, right? For employees, if they were still struggling to work in a remote environment, I would kind of advise them to sort of experiment. So experiment where you work, with your surroundings and your routine, until you find something that works. It's not going to come like overnight, probably not even after a few months. You know, I would say definitely up to a year. It'll kind of take you being comfortable to get that routine of, okay, now I'm like mega productive in this. You know, reach out to your colleagues. If you're struggling, if you're feeling like a lack of focus, you can reach out during these 15-minute calls, and then jump on another follow-up call with whoever can support you. In fact, like I even run something called team huddles, where everyone will jump on and problem solve together if something's challenging. You know, connect with your managers as well. So management can support. They're there to offer support too. And yeah, try co-working spaces and coffee shops. So I think they're the big ones for me.
This is great, Aman. Like, very insightful. I think you're super experienced in this topic. So thank you so much for your input, and thank you for your time doing this. Appreciate it very much. For the audience who would like to catch more on the next episode, make sure that you follow and subscribe to the channel that you're watching. TCP Growth will always be producing a lot of content for you to consume, especially in the remote trends segment. Again, my name is John. Thank you for your time today, and I hope to see you next episode.